The conference room felt like a glass cage. My manager, Edgar, shut the door behind him and stayed standing while I sat frozen in the leather chair. His arms were crossed, and that fake smile he always wore during difficult conversations was already spreading across his face. "We need to cancel your honeymoon leave," he said, like he was discussing the weather. My mouth went completely dry. The air felt thick and heavy, like someone had filled the room with wet concrete. Through the glass walls, I could see my coworkers pretending not to stare. The bright yellow "Congratulations" banner my team had hung outside my cubicle yesterday suddenly looked ridiculous. I felt something click inside my brain. A switch flipping from panic to an ice-cold clarity I'd never experienced before. My hands stopped shaking. My breathing steadied. The wedding was in 3 days. Our honeymoon started Monday. The tickets were bought, the hotel booked, everything paid for months ago. "The Morrison project needs immediate attention," Edgar continued, shuffling papers on the table. "You understand, right? Business comes first." I stared at him for a long moment, then said the only word that made sense. "Okay." Then I stood up and started walking toward my desk to pack my things. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open and a stack of printed emails beside me. Every single approval for my time off was there. Edgar's signature on the original request from 6 months ago, HR's confirmation, even the department coverage schedule showing who would handle my work. I slid my resignation letter into my work tote bag, the crisp white paper disappearing between my wedding planner and a folder of vendor contracts. On top of everything, I carefully laid my grandmother's lace veil, the one I planned to wear Saturday. It felt like armor. My fiancée, Liana, texted me a photo from upstairs. 2 matching suitcases sitting by our bedroom door like patient dogs waiting to be let out for a walk. We'd packed them weeks ago, adding little items here and there as we got excited about our first trip to Italy together. "Ready for tomorrow?" he texted. I looked at the resignation letter peeking out of my bag. Tomorrow? I'd wear my good heels, the navy blue ones for my rehearsal dinner, and end this nightmare on my own terms. "More than ready," I typed back, and for the first time all day, I smiled. Friday morning arrived gray and drizzly, matching my mood perfectly. I walked into the office 15 minutes early, my heels clicking against the marble floor of the lobby. The security guard, Frank, waved from behind his desk. "Big weekend ahead," he called out cheerfully. "You have no idea," I replied, clutching my tote bag tighter. I took the elevator to the 14th floor, walked past the break room where someone had left donuts with a sticky note saying, "For Diana's last day before marriage," and sat down at my desk. My computer hummed to life while I pulled out my resignation letter. Edgar's office door was closed, but I could see him through the glass, talking on the phone with his feet up on his desk. He looked so smug, so sure of himself. He probably thought I'd spent the night crying or begging Liana to postpone the wedding. I placed my security badge on my keyboard like a tiny headstone and walked to his door. When he hung up the phone, I knocked twice and entered without waiting for permission. The letter slid across his desk with a soft whisper. His face went white, then red, then back to white again. "You can't be serious," Edgar sputtered, picking up my resignation letter like it might bite him. "There will be consequences for this, Diana. You're under contract. There are penalties for—" I held up my hand to stop him. The panic I'd expected never came. Instead, I felt the strangest sense of calm, like I was floating above the situation watching it happen to someone else. "The consequences are mine to handle," I said quietly. "My last day is today. I'll send my handoff notes by noon." His face turned purple. "You're making a huge mistake. No one will want to hire someone who abandons their responsibilities right before a major project deadline." I almost laughed. The Morrison project wasn't due for 6 weeks. There was no emergency, no crisis, no legitimate reason to cancel my leave except Edgar's need to flex his power. We both knew it. "I guess we'll see," I said, turning toward the door. The elevator ride down to the lobby felt like the longest and shortest trip of my life. As the doors closed behind me, cutting off the view of the 14th floor forever, I realized something that should have scared me, but didn't. Getting married tomorrow would be the easy part. This was the hard part, and I'd just survived it. Saturday arrived in a blur of white silk and happy tears. Liana and I danced until my hairpins gave up and scattered across the reception hall floor. My feet ached in the most wonderful way, and my cheeks hurt from smiling. At the hotel that night, still wearing my reception dress with the train bustled up, I watched my phone light up with work emails. They buzzed against the nightstand like angry wasps trapped in a jar. Edgar had sent 4 messages, each more frantic than the last. The project manager had sent 6. Even the CEO had sent one with a red exclamation point. I picked up the phone, scrolled through the subject lines, urgent. Morrison project status, need immediate response, where are you? And felt absolutely nothing. No guilt, no anxiety, no second thoughts. Liana emerged from the bathroom in his pajamas, toothbrush hanging from his mouth. Work? He asked, nodding toward the phone. I flipped it face down on the nightstand and pulled him toward the bed. Not anymore. Tomorrow we'd board a plane to Rome. Tonight, I'd sleep without thinking about project deadlines, client meetings, or Edgar's ridiculous demands. Tonight was ours, and it felt like the first real breath I'd taken in years. The Italian sun felt like warm honey on my skin. I stood on our hotel balcony in Rome, watching the horizon melt from deep gray to soft rose as the city woke up below us. Coffee shops were already opening, their owners sweeping sidewalks and arranging small tables on narrow streets. I took a photo of the sunrise, then another of my phone screen showing Edgar's latest email. Immediate disciplinary action pending your return. Expect serious repercussions for your unprofessional behavior. Both pictures felt equally important. One showed beauty and new beginnings. The other showed exactly the kind of person I'd escaped from. I saved them both to a folder labeled Evidence and slipped my phone back into my purse. Liana appeared beside me with 2 cups of espresso, his hair still messy from sleep. Any regrets? He asked softly. I looked out over the red-tiled rooftops, the ancient churches, the winding river that had been flowing through the city for thousands of years. People had been falling in love, getting married, and starting new lives here long before corporate America existed, and they'd keep doing it long after. None, I said, and meant it completely. Even joy, I was learning, could be evidence of making the right choice. 2 weeks later, reality crashed back like a cold wave. I sat at my kitchen table in my interview clothes, a navy blazer I'd ironed until it looked lifeless, eating soup I'd invented from random cans in our pantry. Tomato base, some sad carrots, half a bag of frozen peas. Liana called it recession chili, which was generous. My laptop screen showed 17 job applications in various stages of under review and will be in touch. I kept a spreadsheet I'd optimistically named opportunities, but it looked more like a graveyard with each passing day. The phone wasn't ringing. My savings account was shrinking. The wedding bills were still arriving in cheerful white envelopes that felt heavier each day. I told myself I'd moved on from Edgar and his toxic management style. I told myself I was better off without that job. I told myself everything would work out fine. But late at night, when Liana was asleep and the house was quiet, doubt crept in like smoke under a door. Had I made the right choice? Was standing up for myself worth being unemployed? I was about to find out that the universe had been setting up a meeting I didn't even know I needed. Tuesday arrived, gray and drizzling. The kind of weather that makes you want to stay in bed forever. But I had an interview at 2 o'clock, so I forced myself into my good shoes and walked downtown to kill time beforehand. The rain started coming down harder, so I ducked into Murphy's coffee shop, a tiny place with mismatched chairs and local art covering every wall. I ordered a latte and found a corner table, pulling out my phone to review my interview notes one more time. Diana Carolina? I looked up to see a woman about my age standing beside my table, holding a coffee cup and a leather tote bag stuffed with files. She had bright, intelligent eyes and the kind of confident smile that made you trust her immediately. I'm sorry, do we know each other? I asked, trying to place her face. Bonnie Chen? Well, Bonnie Peterson now. We went to college together. I was on the yearbook committee with you junior year. The memories clicked into place. Bonnie, the journalism major who'd become editor-in-chief by senior year. She'd been smart, funny, and absolutely fearless when it came to asking tough questions. Bonnie, oh my gosh, how are you? She gestured to the empty chair across from me. Mind if I sit? I'm hiding from the rain too. Bonnie settled into her chair and immediately launched into catching up. Law school, marriage, her practice in employment law. She had the same energy she'd had in college, like she was always 3 steps ahead of everyone else, but happy to wait for them to catch up. "What about you?" she asked. "Are you still working at—" She paused, trying to remember. "What was that company you joined right after graduation?" "Nimbus and Associates," I said. Then, because the whole story was sitting right there in my chest like a weight I'd been carrying around, I told her everything. The canceled honeymoon, Edgar's smug face, my resignation letter, the angry emails still arriving in my inbox. Bonnie listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding or raising an eyebrow, but never breaking eye contact. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment, then set her coffee cup down with a soft clink. "Diana," she said carefully, "what you're describing, canceling approved leave 2 days before your wedding with no legitimate business reason, that's not just mean. It might actually be unlawful." I felt my defenses climb up my throat like a ladder. I'm not looking for a lawsuit or anything like that. I'm not trying to get rich or cause trouble. I just want to move on with my life. "But do you want dignity?" Bonnie asked quietly. "I don't want to be that person," I said, the words tumbling out faster than I could think them through. "You know, the employee who sues over everything. The one who can't just accept that sometimes work sucks and move on." Bonnie shrugged, and something in that simple gesture reminded me why I'd always liked her in college. She never judged, never pushed, just laid out facts and let you decide what to do with them. "You don't want to be that person," she said. "But do you want to be the person who lets him do this to the next employee? Because Edgar sounds like the kind of manager who's going to keep pushing boundaries until someone pushes back." Outside, the rain was tapping against the window like a metronome. Steady and insistent. I watched people hurry past under colorful umbrellas, everyone trying to get somewhere dry and safe. I thought about my replacement, whoever Edgar would hire to fill my position. Would he respect their vacation requests, their family time, their basic human need for a work-life balance? "I kept everything," I said finally. "All the emails, the approval forms, even my resignation letter. I don't know why. I just felt like I needed proof of what happened." Bonnie's eyes lit up. "That's perfect. Look, I'm not saying you have to do anything, but would you be willing to bring me those documents, just so I can help you understand what your options are?" That evening, I pulled out the shoebox I'd been storing under my desk. Inside were all the printed emails with Edgar's digital signature, the employee handbook page I'd highlighted in bright yellow showing the vacation policy, my resignation letter, even screenshots of the increasingly frantic messages he'd sent during my honeymoon. My hands shook slightly as I organized everything into neat piles, but it wasn't fear making them tremble. It felt more like a fuse catching fire. That moment, right before an explosion, when everything goes quiet. And still, I texted Bonnie. "I have everything organized. Can we meet tomorrow?" Her response came back within minutes. "My office at 10 a.m. Bring it all." Liana found me at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers like I was planning a military campaign. He sat down beside me and picked up one of the emails, Edgar's message from our second day in Rome, demanding I call him immediately about a project emergency that turned out to be a question about formatting. "You know what's crazy?" Liana said quietly. "I never told you this, but I actually hoped something like this would happen." I stared at him. "You hoped my boss would ruin our honeymoon?" "No," he said, squeezing my hand. "I hoped you'd finally see what I've been seeing for 3 years, that you deserve so much better than the way they treated you." Bonnie's law office smelled like lemon cleaning spray and fresh paper. It was smaller than I'd expected. Just 2 rooms with tall windows and shelves lined with legal books that looked actually used rather than decorative. She didn't waste time with small talk. Bonnie spread my documents across her conference table, underlining dates with a red pen and asking questions that made me remember details I'd forgotten. "This email from Edgar," she said, pointing to one from my first day in Rome. "He says the Morrison project deadline moved up unexpectedly, but look at this message from 2 weeks earlier. He's telling the client the timeline is flexible." I leaned over her shoulder to read Edgar's own words contradicting his emergency. The hypocrisy was right there in black and white. If we pursue this, Bonnie said carefully, it's not going to be fast. These things take time, and companies have lawyers who specialize in making employees go away quietly. You need to understand that up front. I took a deep breath, thinking about my empty bank account and the stack of rejection letters growing on my kitchen counter. I'm not doing this for money, I said finally. I just want to be treated like a human being. Is that too much to ask? Bonnie smiled, not the polite professional smile, but the real one I remembered from college. Not even a little bit. The next few weeks fell into a strange new routine. Mornings were for job applications and temp work. I'd landed a short-term filing position that paid barely enough to cover groceries. Afternoons were for quiet phone calls with Bonnie about timelines and documentation. Evenings were for long walks around our neighborhood, while Liana and I tried not to panic about money. My spouse learned to recognize my 3 a.m. face, the anxious expression I wore when I woke up wondering if I'd made a terrible mistake. Without being asked, he'd make chamomile tea and sit with me in the dark kitchen until the worry passed. Small victories kept us going. One recruiter actually called me back for a second interview. Bonnie found an email I'd forgotten about, Edgar praising my work on a project just 1 week before canceling my honeymoon. Each piece of evidence felt like finding a $20 bill in an old coat pocket. The process is working, Bonnie assured me during one of our check-ins. Slowly, but it's working. I wanted to believe her. Some days I did. Other days I wondered if Edgar had been right about the consequences of standing up for myself. Would other companies really see me as a troublemaker? Would this follow me forever? But then I'd remember his smug face in that conference room, and I'd know I couldn't have chosen differently. The first settlement offer arrived on a Thursday morning, buried in Bonnie's email like a small, disappointing present. The amount wouldn't even cover our plane tickets to Italy, much less the salary I'd lost or the stress I'd endured. It's insulting, I said, staring at the number on Bonnie's computer screen. It's a test, Bonnie replied calmly. They're seeing if you're desperate enough to take anything. Classic corporate strategy, wait until you're broke and scared, then offer peanuts and hope you grab them. The worst part was how well they knew their tactics. I was broke. I was scared. For about 10 minutes, sitting in Bonnie's office, I seriously considered taking the money and walking away. Then I thought about Edgar's email from my honeymoon, the one where he'd written, I hope you're learning that actions have consequences. He'd been so sure I'd come crawling back, apologizing and begging for my job. What do we tell them? I asked. Bonnie's fingers were already moving across her keyboard. One word, she said. Declined. The rejection email went out that afternoon. I celebrated by buying generic cereal instead of the store brand for the first time in weeks. It felt like a revolution in my kitchen. 2 weeks later, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. I almost deleted it. I'd been getting spam constantly since my email address appeared on job boards, but something made me open it. Hey Diana, this is Johnny Martinez. I used to work in Edgar's department before transferring to the West Coast office. I heard about what happened with your honeymoon leave, and I'm really sorry. If you have time for a quick call, I might have some information that could help. I stared at the message for a full minute before forwarding it to Bonnie. She called me within an hour. Do you trust this guy? She asked. Johnny had been one of the good ones, quiet, hardworking, the kind of person who kept his head down and did his job well. He'd helped train me when I first started and had always been respectful and professional. Yeah, I said, I do. Then call him back. But be careful what you say. We don't know who might be listening. That evening, Johnny and I talked for 30 minutes. What he told me made my hands shake with anger and vindication in equal measure. Edgar hadn't just canceled my leave. He'd joked about it in the management chat, calling it making an example of entitled employees and specifically mentioning teaching brides that work comes first. Johnny had screenshots. He was willing to share them. I can't believe he put that in writing, Bonnie said, scrolling through Johnny's screenshots on her tablet. I mean, I'm grateful that he did. But what kind of manager thinks it's okay to document their illegal behavior? The messages were even worse than Johnny had described. Edgar bragging to other department heads about putting employees in their place. A response from another manager saying harsh but fair. The HR director, who was supposed to protect employees, adding a laughing emoji. This changes everything, Bonnie continued. We're not just talking about one bad decision anymore. This shows a pattern of discriminatory behavior and a hostile work environment. I felt sick to my stomach. How many other employees had Edgar targeted? How many people had quit rather than fight back, leaving him free to continue his power trips? Johnny's taking a risk by giving us these, I said. He could get in trouble if they find out. Johnny's smart, Bonnie replied. He transferred offices right after your situation, and he's documented everything. He knows what Edgar is. We spent the next hour crafting a response to the company's legal team. Bonnie's language was professional, but firm. New evidence had come to light, and we were prepared to expand our case to include the hostile work environment and discriminatory practices. I went home that night feeling something I hadn't experienced in months. Hope. 3 days later, I got a call from the hiring manager at Sterling Marketing, a mid-sized company where I'd interviewed 2 weeks earlier. I'd written them off after not hearing back, assuming they'd moved on to other candidates. Diana, I wanted to follow up on our conversation, the manager, Patricia Wells, said. During your interview, you mentioned leaving your previous position due to a conflict over approved vacation time. Can you tell me a bit more about that situation? My heart sank. This was it. The moment every unemployed person dreads, when your reason for leaving becomes a red flag that destroys your chances. I took a breath and told the truth in one sentence. My manager canceled my honeymoon leave 2 days before my wedding with no legitimate business reason, so I resigned. There was a long pause. Then Patricia said something I never expected. Good for you. That takes courage, and it tells me you have strong boundaries and self-respect. Those are exactly the qualities we want in our team. I nearly dropped the phone. Does that mean? Second round interview is next Tuesday. Are you available? I walked out of that call feeling lighter than I had in months. Maybe Edgar had been wrong about the consequences after all. Maybe standing up for yourself actually was something employers valued, not feared. For the first time since this whole nightmare started, I allowed myself to believe things might actually work out. The second interview at Sterling Marketing went even better than the first. Patricia introduced me to the team, walked me through their current projects, and discussed salary ranges that made my empty bank account do a little happy dance. We'd like to offer you a 3-month contract position with the possibility of going permanent. Patricia said at the end of our meeting, it's not full-time benefits yet, but the pay is competitive, and you'd be working with really good people. I accepted on the spot. My first paycheck from Sterling felt like sunlight streaming across my kitchen floor. I celebrated by buying real groceries, fresh vegetables, good bread, coffee that didn't come from a gas station, and sent Bonnie the receipt timestamps she'd requested for our case documentation. How does it feel? Liana asked, watching me arrange actual fruit in our fruit bowl for the first time in weeks. Like I can breathe again, I said, and it was true. The constant anxiety about money was finally starting to ease, replaced by something I'd almost forgotten, excitement about work. My new team was everything Edgar's department hadn't been. Collaborative, respectful, focused on results rather than politics. No one made jokes about work-life balance. No one questioned my commitment when I left at 5 p.m. It felt like proof that healthy workplaces actually existed, and I'd been right to hold out for one. That's when the real bombshell dropped. Bonnie called me on a Friday afternoon, her voice tight with controlled excitement. Diana, we've got something big. One of our contacts at Nimbus just reached out with information about Edgar's emergency that required canceling your leave. What kind of information? Internal emails showing that Edgar backdated the Morrison project crisis. Someone found a draft of his message to you, with timestamps from after your honeymoon had already started. He literally made up the emergency after the fact to justify what he'd already decided to do. I sat down hard on my couch, the phone pressed against my ear. Are you saying he lied? I'm saying he documented his lie. If this is accurate, Edgar didn't just treat you badly, he created false evidence to cover up discriminatory behavior. That's not just petty management. That's potentially fraud. The room felt like it was spinning. I'd known Edgar was vindictive and power-hungry, but this was something else entirely. This was calculated deception designed to destroy my credibility and justify his actions. What does this mean for our case? I asked. It means we're not talking about settlement offers anymore, Bonnie said. It means we press forward with everything we've got. That weekend, Edgar made his biggest mistake yet. He sent me a direct email to my personal account, bypassing Bonnie and the legal process entirely. Diana, I want you to know that I'm sorry you felt inconvenienced by the business decisions we had to make regarding your vacation request. I hope you can understand that sometimes work requirements change unexpectedly, and we all have to adapt. I wish you the best in your future endeavors. I read it 3 times, my chest heating up like a stovetop burner. Sorry you felt inconvenienced. Not sorry for what he'd done, just sorry I'd had feelings about it. Classic non-apology disguised as taking the high road. I wrote 3 different responses, the first one angry, the second one sarcastic, the third one professional but cold. Then I deleted all of them and forwarded Edgar's message to Bonnie instead. Her response came back within minutes. A detailed breakdown of every contradiction between Edgar's email and the documented evidence we'd collected. She sent it directly to Edgar and copied the company's legal team. He just handed us his head on a silver platter, Bonnie texted me. Professional tip, never contact the opposing party directly when there are lawyers involved. He's panicking, and it shows. I saved Edgar's email in my evidence folder, right between the screenshots of his discriminatory jokes and the proof that he'd backdated the emergency. The man was basically building our case for us. But success didn't make the fear go away. At 3 a.m, I found myself sitting on our kitchen floor in my wedding sweatshirt, the soft gray one with Mrs. Carolina embroidered in silver thread, counting our savings on my fingers like a child learning math. Even with my new contract position, money was tight. Legal battles were expensive, even when Bonnie was working for a percentage rather than hourly fees. The wedding bills were still arriving. Our emergency fund had become our grocery fund months ago. Liana found me there and slid down beside me on the cold tiles, bumping my shoulder with his. Whatever happens with this whole thing, he said quietly, we're going to be okay. That simple reassurance didn't magically fix our bank account or guarantee we'd win the case. But it gave me something more valuable than money, the strength to keep going. I'm scared, I admitted. Me too, he said. But you know what I'm not scared of? You. You're the strongest person I know, and you're fighting for something that matters. That's not something to be afraid of. We sat there until sunrise, holding hands on our kitchen floor, ready to face whatever came next. The validation I'd been craving came from an unexpected source. My old client, Rebecca Stone from the Morrison Project, sent an email to my personal account on a Tuesday afternoon. Diana, I heard you'd left Nimbus & Associates, and I wanted to reach out personally. The project handoff documentation you prepared before your departure was absolutely stellar. Detailed, organized, and comprehensive. It got our team through the transition seamlessly. If you're looking for new opportunities, I'd love to discuss some potential roles we have opening up. You're exactly the kind of professional we want to work with. I read the email twice, then took a screenshot before forwarding it to Bonnie. Professional validation felt like cold water after a long run, exactly what I needed to hear after months of Edgar's gaslighting about my performance. This is gold, Bonnie texted back. A client specifically praising the work Edgar claimed was substandard. We're adding this to the file. That afternoon, I called Rebecca back. We talked for 20 minutes about potential consulting opportunities, and she mentioned something that made my heart race. Edgar had told her team I'd abandoned the project and left them without proper documentation. I have to tell you, Rebecca said, we were shocked when we saw how thorough your handoff actually was. Someone wasn't being honest about your departure. Another lie. Another piece of evidence. Edgar's own web of deception was strangling him. The company's second settlement offer arrived with strings attached that looked like prison bars. The amount was significantly higher, Enough to pay off our wedding expenses, replace our drained savings, and give us breathing room for the first time in months. But buried in the legal language was a clause that made my stomach turn. "It's a gag order," Bonnie explained, highlighting the relevant section with her yellow marker. "They want to pay you to disappear quietly, no talking to former coworkers, no posting about your experience online, no sharing your story with anyone. Ever." I stared at the number on the page. It was more money than I'd expected, enough to change our immediate financial situation completely. For a moment I imagined paying off every bill, buying groceries without checking our account balance, maybe even taking a real vacation. Then I thought about Johnny, taking a risk to share Edgar's discriminatory messages. About Rebecca, unknowingly revealing Edgar's lies to clients. About the next employee who would walk into that toxic environment without knowing what they were facing. "They want my silence," I said. "They're buying your silence," Bonnie corrected. "The question is, what's it worth to you?" I looked at the crooked "Congratulations" banner folded in my evidence box, thinking about the person I'd been 6 months ago and the person I'd become. "It's not for sale," I said finally, "not at any price." The hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday that smelled like rain. Liana and I sat in the courthouse waiting room, watching a toddler nearby stack plastic cups into wobbly towers while her mother filled out paperwork. The mundane normalcy of it felt both absurd and sacred. Life continuing its ordinary rhythms while my professional future hung in the balance. Bonnie emerged from a conference room with that careful brightness lawyers wear when they're carrying good news, but trying not to oversell it. I knew before she spoke that something had shifted in our favor. "We have a settlement," she said softly, like she was carrying a birthday cake. "Not hush money, real acknowledgement of wrongdoing, full back pay for the time you were unemployed, compensation for the emotional distress, and enough extra to give you some security while you build your new career." The amount she quoted made me dizzy. It wasn't lottery winner money, but it was life-changing, enough to pay off the wedding completely, replace our savings, and put a down payment on the little house with the front porch that we'd been dreaming about but never dared to budget for. "There's more," Bonnie continued. "The company agreed to rewrite their vacation policies to prevent this from happening again. And Edgar? He's no longer with the company. Apparently, he decided to pursue other opportunities." We signed the papers, walked out into a parking lot full of puddles, and laughed until we bent over double with relief and joy and the sweet taste of justice finally served.